Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. I'm your host, Kyle David. If you didn't know, now you know. So welcome. Hey, I am joined for the second time. You don't know this, but this is the second time Johnson and I are having this conversation here. We recorded an episode last week, and on my end, I had technical difficulties. And if you know me, I'm not the IT guy. But anyways, today my guest, Johnson Tran, is back in the building. Johnson, thanks for being here, bro.
Hey, awesome. Appreciate you having me back for round 2.
100%.
But starting at the beginning, all good. Like you and I
Yeah.
both said, I'm just a dumb sales guy too. So I don't know. I guess you're supposed to wait till it says
Right.
100% uploading complete before you X out.
Just two boring sales guys. That's all we are.
That's it, man. That's it. Stay humble that way.
Amen. Well, bro, I'm excited. This is going to be fantastic. I actually feel lucky that I get to do it again. So it worked out selfishly in my favor because I get to hang with you again. But anyways, let's get into it, man. Like, just like we ran it before, who is Johnson? What's the story here? I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Yeah, man, where can I start? I think I think like a lot of people, they always like the, hey, I'm a first generation immigrant story. So yes, I'm a first generation immigrant. So it's really cool. Super blessed and fortunate to actually have the opportunity to say that, because I think, growing up in a world where it was 7 of us in this, tiny house, 1,500 square foot, $20,000, cockroaches, right? And I always joke, but it's like government bologna and cheese with no name, bagged cereal. It's always interesting when you grow up in that world and you don't know what's better or you don't know what's worse. You just know that, like, hey, I get to eat a sandwich today. Hey, I get to go to school. Hey, my shoes talk. Mom, can I get a new pair of shoes? No, honey, go put some glue on it, get some super glue, put it back together. You can go run back in those shoes. And so, it's a world where you come from nothing. My dad was a soldier during the Vietnam War in the 70s. So back in the 70s, he got a one-way plane ticket to Oil City, Pennsylvania, started a new life. And so that's kind of the initial story. But my upbringing comes from very humble beginnings. I could still remember that, and I like to share these stories because I think this is what makes people who they are. And I remember being a kid, elementary, started getting, grades, A's, B's. And every time I would get straight A's, my mom would go, hey, here's $1.08. So my mom worked in this little gas station, bulletproof glass kiosk, if you remember. And
Of course.
people would walk up and buy a pack of cigarettes. You put it in the drawer and you push it out, right? But they give you money first, and then I literally grew up under the counter of a Shell gas station on 290 in Jones Road.
Really?
Yeah, my sister and I. So we would come home from school. We walk down from the bus stop. Yep. Kyle, we hop in her car and we go to the bulletproof Shell gas station kiosk, and we're in there under the cigarette stand. And so that's how I grew up, right? And sister and I go to work with mom, play cards under it. But we would bring home straight A's, and she goes $1.08. And I'm like, cool, mom. And she's like, you get to walk over there and get you a $1.08 Whopper, right, from Burger King. So those are those memories are so close to me, and I'm going to give them a little plug, but they should probably sponsor your show now, Kyle. But I have this Burger King crown that sits next to me on my lamp because it's a reminder of where I came from, right? 8 years old.
That's so cool.
Making straight A's, and that's what you get, just $1.08. So I very humble. My parents had a ton of humility. Obviously, my dad was a hardworking guy. So they worked 7 days a week, and I can only see them. I saw my dad suppers every night, church Sunday morning, and the Houston Oilers and Texans game on Sunday. And still to this day, He is 75 years old. If the Texans are playing, me and my dad are over there. So
that's cool.
Well, you got to cherish those moments. And my dad, I tell a lot of people, growing up in, I guess, lower middle class per se, you have a different lens in life. You're trying to learn martial arts so you can protect yourself in a fight. You're trying to, keep your spot in the lunchroom. You're trying to keep your lunch. You're trying to see, how you can avoid conflict because you don't want to go the wrong way, right? Because there's a lot of
Mhm.
people, like, you've encountered in your years that you make one left turn instead of going the right way, you go the wrong way, and then
Yep.
you just go down this slippery slope. So there, gangsters in my neighborhood, fights all the time, and you see that, and you have to avoid it. So my dad was my Ziggy calendar. Every
Hmm.
day I'd wake up, my dad would have a sticky note, Kyle, and it would say just something basic. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like no lying, cheating, stealing, or hiding, right?
Hmm.
I saw it probably once a
Basic.
month or once a week. Basic stuff that
Yeah.
a lot of people aren't intentional with their kids with, right? They think they should just pick it up because they're out there, or they read a book, or they go to church on Sundays. And so my dad would do those things. He would do small things like, hey, son, if you make $5, spend three, save two. And I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, dad. Yeah. But it was kind of planting seeds. If you think about like a crop,
Hmm.
you just keep planting them and then they keep growing. So over time, I learned what that meant as I got older, as I went and had a job.
Hmm.
But there's only been two people that have been really close to that I've would consider a mentor per se, or somebody I follow, is Bruce Lee and my dad, right?
Hmm.
And so I got the opportunity from, 0 to 26 years old. Yes, I sacrificed my college years. I didn't live the party on 6th Street, Austin, Texas, right? Thursday,
Hmm.
Friday,
Yep.
Saturday. I didn't do that. I lived at home. And
Yeah.
nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to
Nope.
be close to their
Nope.
parents.
No
Nobody wants
fun.
to live at home. Kyle, right?
Yeah, of course. I chose to do the opposite.
Okay, see, and most people do
Yeah.
because they want to get away. I tell
Yep.
people there's again, this is who Johnson is. I
Yep.
chose to be close. I chose from 16, my teens, to 26 when it mattered to live at home, even through college. Hey, here are the benefits. I saved a ton of money because I worked full time at T-Mobile, right? I
Hmm.
was out selling cellular services, living at home, saved 5 years worth of college paychecks, right? Full time work, full time school. I got to eat mom's good home cooking, right? Like people forget. Why do you run away from your parents and you come home and see mom for Christmas and Thanksgiving and maybe Mother's Day or whatever? And then that's or Easter. Like
Yep.
I got to eat it all the time. And then my dad kept being my Ziggy calendar.
Hmm.
Like, hey, if you walk down a parking lot, make sure you don't look at your phone. Make sure you look at all the cars and in between the cars, like teaching me the basics of safety and how to,
Hmm.
just be a man, right? Carry myself
Sure.
right, be secure, know my surroundings. But so that's what I did. And a lot of people don't do that.
Yep.
But if you fast forward now, all those sacrifices, my story kind of almost stopped at 21 years old in 10 months.
Mm,
So,
right.
had a hard upbringing, had to learn how to fight, grew up with, like I said, bologna and cheese with no name, bag cereal. And then you go through this point, and then you live at home and you see all your friends having fun. I don't want to say privilege, but they had more than I did, right? All of them did.
Sure.
And you still pick the hard route to go. And then boom, 21 years old, 10 months. 2 months before I turned 22, I flipped a car 5 times forward, not racing, not just, dude, veered off the road, flipped it 5 times forward, ICU for 2 weeks, couldn't move for 2 months, physical therapy for a year and a half. Wasn't supposed to walk again. I had like a 15% chance to walk again. Uh, you know, doctor's like, son, you had 10 minutes left and you were going to die. Like I lost
Hmm.
7 units of blood. I pretty much bled to death. And I was 20. And and if I go back, and this is kind of when the light bulb happened, I realized that I think Kyle, you mentioned a tagline you like that I have on my LinkedIn, right? It's I plead the fifth.
Yep. I
So
love it.
I'll I'll bring it up now. And I plead the fifth. If you watch A Few Good Men or Men of Honor, it's a law term, right? You're not saying
Hmm.
anything. But my plead the fifth is faith, integrity, family time, and health. Those are the only things that matter, right? If
Hmm.
those are good, you have to earn those, and you can only use them. You can't go buy them with the dollar. Everything else in life you could buy with the dollar. And I realized at 21 years old and 10 months that I was losing my faith, right? I was I was
Hmm.
I was making money and every quarter I'd go have fun, but I was skipping out on church, right? So like kind of like having somebody keep you straight down that road and doing the right things and not going left and only making the right turns, right, to get you there. opposite in NASCAR, right? In NASCAR, you go left all the time. But I was making the right decisions. That was one thing, right? And that was kind of the foundation of my plead the fifth. And then I realized, in sales and in everything I did that, if you have a moral compass and you're following the right path, you automatically have good integrity, right? You do right by people.
Yeah.
In sales, there's salespeople
Mhm.
that will they'll push a deal in because they're chasing that thing, right? They're like,
Yep.
dang, I gotta finance that awesome thing, whatever it is, that
Sure.
$100,000 car, $50,000 watch, whatever it is, they're chasing something. Or I gotta get this
Sure.
fly Supreme t-shirt that costs $300. What the heck?
Yep.
I'm like, why are you losing your integrity to finance those? Why would you lose your faith, right? So that was kind of my
Totally.
faith integrity. And then also my family, right? I was 21 years old, going to be 22. I knew more than everybody, right? I'm the smarter guy.
course.
I'm working full
Of course you
time
did.
making money. I'm going to school I figured out how to pay my own way through college because my parents didn't have any money, right?
Mhm.
At 15, they were like, if you ever say you want a pair of shoes, you go buy it yourself. If you want a shirt, they told me that at 15. So I had to figure it out. So I figured it out. I was like, hey, I got the answers, right? I wasn't the rebellious teenager that didn't do anything and said they know everything. I actually went and did it and thought I did know everything, but I did it. So,
Sure.
there's a couple family debacles that we had. Dad was like, are you stupid, kid? You know what I mean? Wanted to pop me inside the head.
Mhm.
But he's like, and so there's the family thing, right? So I realized then too that in that moment, those three things were affected: my faith, my integrity, my family, automatically, right?
Mhm.
And then you think about the time it took me just to learn how to walk again. I learned how to walk when I was 0 to 2. We all do.
Sure.
And then I had to learn how to walk again from 21 to 23, pretty much. It was
That's crazy.
crazy. Kyle, I share this because this is, everybody's like, hey, Johnson, how you doing today? I'm like, dude, 6 foot above, can't complain. I got on my own 2
Mhm.
feet. I poured my own cup of coffee, and I still get to go to the restroom by myself. Because there was a point in my life for 6 months, I was in a hospital bed, and then the hospital bed then went to one of my sister's house because she had a 1-story house with a room downstairs. So they brought the hospital bed in there, and I'm just laying in my bed. I'm pooping in my bed in a can. I'm peeing in a
Oh.
cup. Stories that are untold, right?
Yeah. Sure.
My sisters and my family then had to go carry it out for me and dump it out into a toilet or carry it to a trash can, just like I was 0 to 2, right?
Yeah.
And then the only thing I could do was try to get up from the hospital bed to a commode or a wheelchair. I celebrated my 22nd birthday in a wheelchair at one of my best buds' house. That was my 22nd birthday.
Brutal.
So the time it took and the time I wasted because I lost my vision in my faith, integrity, family, right? Because I thought I knew everything. And then that time. And then now my health was affected. So
Sure.
I was training hard in Taekwondo. Obviously, I'm a big martial artist, right? This is a Wing Chun dummy. This is my black belt certificate right here when I was
Let's go.
younger. But then, Kyle, imagine somebody telling you you can't do your most favorite thing
Sure.
anymore, whatever your favorite thing is, right?
Yeah.
And that's what happened, right? Somebody, some aura said, you're not going to be able to do these pretty spinning, flying, beautiful kicks that Taekwondo people do. And it's
Sure.
like, boom, right? Can't play football the same. You know what I mean? And it's like, wow, life changes. And so the health piece is big. So literally at 22, I realized, and I was watching A Few Good Men, and I was watching Men of Honor, and I still remember them saying, I plead the fifth, and then the lawyer would come in, or any of those law movies, right? Or
Sure.
And so that's when it dawned on me. I was like, oh my gosh, I got to create this thing that I need to follow in my life. So every day I wake up, I know I plead the fifth, right? Faith, integrity, family, time, and health are the only things that matter. Nothing else does.
I love it. And based on the time that I've spent with you now and knowing you, it sounds like you do run everything through those lenses. And I think we even mentioned this last time. And then nothing else really, if nothing aligns with that, it doesn't even take any of your time or energy, right? You just filter it out. Okay, I never asked you this, so I'm curious about this. Because you've had, right, like you talked about this. I actually was telling someone at work the other day, a younger guy, about your statement that you've said before, and you said earlier about sacrificing your 10 years. Choose your decade, right? Like you said,
Yes.
choose your decade that you're going to sacrifice to get to where you want to go. You chose 16 to 26, it sounds like, right? The younger years. And so because of that, right, like you've had a lot of success career-wise. You've been able to make yourself financially successful and stable. Um,
Mhm.
but I'm curious, like, one, I want to hear you talk about money because you have some really, really good thoughts on money. But real quickly, I would be curious, like, why sales? I never asked you that. Why'd you get into sales? You could have done anything.
Oh man, that is that is awesome that you asked that, Kyle. So, which one do you want me to tell you why sales first, or you want me to
Yeah,
we'll do the
because
sales one
sales
first?
leads to the money.
Yes, yes. So as a kid growing as a kid growing up with nothing, you learn how to be, I don't know, creative per se. You
Hmm.
learn how to, be very frugal. So I do joke till this day, people go, "Hey, I want McDonald's, right? I want a Mc whatever." And or like I'm a Mac Daddy, like some guys rappers and stuff, they're like, "I'm a Mac Daddy." I go, "That's cool
Sure.
because I'm a Mac frugal, right? I am Mac frugal to the T, brother." Like
Ridiculous.
it was if you really, really knew the insides of how cheap I was, from being young till now, I like everybody jokes. I have good friends. I've taken it
Uh,
to a way another level, but I'll have some good stories for you today. So when I was young, I think I realized I was a salesperson looking back. Like if I say right now, if I look back at the Johnson from being a kid, a couple
mhm.
things automatically I remember. So when I was like 7 years old, there's a place called like D&D Comics in Memorial City Mall here in Houston, Texas. And we would always go in there. My mom would go in there every weekend just to burn some time, go to TJ Maxx, whatever it was. And there was a D&D Comics, and I wanted a comic book. That was like my one thing. So, but I didn't want to spend my dollar for my A's to buy it. I didn't want to say because I wanted to walk with every because again, 6 weeks to get $1, right? You're like, oh my gosh, there's
Sure.
only six weeks, and I'm only gonna get $6 this year. Where do I spend it? I'd rather spend it in my
Mhm.
belly. But my mom was very nice. She gave me $1.50 or like $1.25. I walked into D&D Comics. I literally spent 4 hours looking at comic books, and I found the comic I want that was $1.25. I actually negotiated the guy not to charge me taxes because I was a kid. I had no idea there was taxes, Kyle. So I'm
What are
like, I literally
taxes?
go, yeah. Hey, I go, hey, I want that comic book. It's $1.25. He's like, yeah, yeah, $1.25. So he did the sales thing. He didn't tell me what the total cost was. He told me what the subtotal was, and then he did a gotcha.
Hmm.
But then he gave me the comic book. He rang it up. He's like $1, whatever, $1.30 something. And I go, oh, sir, but I only have $1.25. He's like, well, I can't sell it to you. I'm like, hey, look, I had to really work hard for this. I basically told him why. My mom only, I did the Whopper story. My mom only gives me,
Hmm.
and he's like, dude, that's an awesome story. He's like, no problem. He literally gave me the comic book. It took my $1.25. That was my first comic book. Then what I realized was when I go to like my friends who had more than me, they wanted my one comic book that I had, and they had a collection already that was stacked up. So then I would go ask
Mm.
my friend. I'd be like, he'd be like, dude, that's a comic book I've always wanted. And I'm like, great. And I looked at it. I looked at his like, you want to trade? And he's like, yeah. And then I had no idea, but stuff my dad would tell me and my mom, because I always hear them negotiate. Every story they would negotiate. So I go,
Love it.
well, how many do you want to trade for mine? And
Yeah.
he'd be like, one. And I'd be like, what about three? And then so whatever, I got three for one, right? So
Sales.
yeah, yep, sales. I go to my next friend's house. I know it. So I parlayed my one comic book into like 4 boxes of comic books. So that's looking from now all the way back. That's what I
Yeah.
realized I was a sales guy. I think the
Yeah.
second
That
one,
makes a ton of sense.
any parents, Kyle, that are out there with kids, or any kids that are out there that are getting in trouble a lot for talking in school, I would
Hmm.
get good grades, honor roll. There's only 1 year I failed, which was almost failed, which is ninth grade. Another whole story. But uh, a lot of kids get in trouble for talking too much in class. Like my son right now, he's 7, and he talks too much. It's cool. But every 2 weeks, I would bring a bad note home, and I would have to go in my front door, kneel down on the little spike rubber mats to take the mud off your boots. And I had to put my hands out like Jesus because that's how I got in trouble. And I share this because that was my punishment for talking too much every 2 weeks. Literally, it was clockwork. A bad note would come every 2 weeks. And it's funny, I fast forward now, and I sit with my dad. I go, hey, Dad, you remember when you used to pop me and punish me when I was young? And I was like, I make money from all the unsatisfactory notes that I got in school back in the days. And
it's the same skill set.
Same skill set. I learned how to make friends. I learned how to negotiate. I learned all these things because I had to make it, right? Like just to make it through elementary, junior high, and high school. I had to figure it. So yeah, I mean, that's literally what happened. And then I remember my first sales job was it was at a sunglass shop in Willowbrook Mall in Houston, and that was my first sales job. And I would always blow it out of the water. And so, long story short, literally, I've been in sales since 16 years old, right? Wow. And I'm 41 now. So
you chose a path and you stuck with it. A lot of people hop around, right?
Yes, they try one thing, then they're like, oh. They're like, I want to be an accountant. Then they go get their accounting degree. They're like, I don't want to do that. Then they become a lawyer. I stuck with sales. I have sold a lot of different things to try to figure out what I like to sell. But yeah,
what do you like to sell? What's the thing that if you could sell it forever, the one thing you're like, this is the one thing that I would love to sell forever?
Dude, honestly, I think and it's so cheesy, dude. Selling happiness somehow, man. Like how do I inspire, make people happy? How can I sell that? I don't care what you do in life. I really think about like how do I do that? Like my goal is, even when I do interactions at work or interactions with people, it's like, how do I walk in with a smile on my face all the time? Got my Johnson one-liners to put a smirk on people's faces so they realize that they're having a good day, and just bottle that up and sell it. Right? I would love to just do that. Now, yes, if you were to say an actual thing, I'm a tech. I guess tech is my second favorite thing. Automotive is my first. Martial arts somewhere in the mix. So those are my three most favorite passions in life.
Makes sense.
And I am doing them all in some capacity, right? So I am fulfilling those. Yeah. I think if really it's how to take everything you and I always talk about and that we hold to our heart and give that to other people, right? Share the real stories that matter in life versus all the fake stuff that people like to sell. So
of course. Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing right here. Right. And like Damon West, right? Like that guy's packaged up his story and his ability to help people have a different perspective, and he just is able to now give it. I love it. I think it's huge. Okay, so cool.
Really
Sales
quick,
makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
Yes. But I'm going to answer your 16 to 26 thing, because that was the other one I didn't answer yet. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, so I tell people a lot. So, this is, I think money is kind of the root of all evil. More money, more problems, as in the Biggie song goes, if you listen to that before. But it is true, right? But you need it to live. You need to eat, have a place to live, car to drive. I think what happens with a lot of people is their parents, or they never try to understand that they have to have a system or foundation of money. I think that's the biggest problem. That is probably number one. It is, we talked about this before. It's almost like if you think about a house and a foundation, a lot of people use this analogy, but if your parents give you so much knowledge and you go actually learn how real money works and how you should save it, like my dad always says, if you make $5, spend $3, save $2. And then in sales, I took it even further because we get commission checks. I go, but if you make $20, you spend $3 and save $17, because you're getting extra money, right? You still don't veer off the path of that ratio of you only spend $3 and you save everything else, no matter how big of the money comes in. But you do that for a decade, right? Pick the decade, and I did it from 16 to 26. When I made $5, I spent $3, I saved $2, and I got to live at home. I didn't have to pay for an apartment. Again, all the cool things that I said at the beginning, learning my parents, eating my mom's good food. But that's what I did, because I knew my foundation, what my dad told me, with all those little sticky notes and napkins and foam cardboard boxes that he would write my little Ziggy calendar notes on. He would actually, that was engraved in my head automatically. So I had this big foundation, right? Like a house. It was already big, 3,000 square foot, concrete slab. Start off well. Yeah, when I bought my first house, it was tiny. You know what I mean? Yeah, but I was okay with it. Because if you put a tiny home on that slab, if you just park a car on it, it's still your slab. It's still your foundation. It doesn't matter what pretty shiny thing is on top of it. It doesn't matter if it's stucco walls. It doesn't matter if it's brick. Your foundation's never going to go away. And if you started on that foundation with something small, like a small home or tiny home or studio, you can always go back to it as long as your foundation's good, right?
That's
so you
good.
can build whatever it is you want on top of that. But people don't think like that. People don't even care about the foundation these days. They're just like, hey, let's go build a stucco house on this clay in Houston, Texas. And then what happens? 3 years later, 8 years later, they lose their job, they lose all their money, and then their house falls apart, right? And then they have to go try to pick themselves back up and then go. But if you keep chasing the shiny, beautiful image of things and you put it on a foundation that's not good, then it's always going to crumble, right?
Of course.
Hurricane can come in, it's going to take it off. Hailstorm, whatever. The ground moves, whatever. And so that's kind of what I tell people. Figure out a system and foundation, right? Kind of like my plead the fifth. That's my system foundation just to navigate in life. Money, find a foundation. If you like money, you make $5, spend 3, save 2, figure it out. But if you do that just for a decade, 16 to 26, like think about just saving a couple hundred a month. I always tell people $500 a month, whatever it is you can for 10 years, sacrifice it. Then what happens after that, you could do whatever you want. So from 16 to 26, just to give real life stories, I do like to share this because people don't realize everybody has a line, right? I have a good buddy. His successful tagline is I'm 0 to 20 in 6 years. So he built the company from 0 to 20 million in 6 years. And man, that's awesome, right? My tagline is no mortgage by 28, unofficially retired by 36. And it was because that decade sacrifice. Guys, I'm not Mark Zuckerberg. I'm the dumb sales guy. But what I knew was that foundation from 16 to 26 was going to jumpstart the rest of my life. So I can do what I want, when I want, how I want, with who I want. Because those matter to me, right?
Yeah.
So pick it. If you don't pick 16 to 26, then you're going to eat it from 35 to 45, right? Or, which sucks because if you have kids and stuff and you make them live in a tiny home and it's tough, right?
Sure.
Or you're going to do it in I think we call it the golden years or glory years, which is your retirement years, 65 to 75, when you're not going to buy anything, you're going to live super small. Why would you wait until then to sacrifice your decade? If the earlier you do it, the better you're going to be, right? So that's my mentality. And again, kudos to my dad for beating it into me on the money thing, because and he would always say cash is king, son. He would always tell me that. So your dad is
an absolute legend, right? Like I don't even know him, but all the things that he taught you. And I've been thinking a lot about that. I have a lot of friends that are fathers and husbands, and some of my good friends. We talk pretty consistently about the importance of strong, solid foundations as a father, right? Instilling your kids with the right morals and values and the things that they need to go out and be successful in the world and have a positive impact on other people, right? It sounds like your dad gave you basically the secrets to most of those things, right?
1,000%.
Yeah.
Because if he didn't do those things, I wouldn't do what I do with my kids today about money and hard working and negotiating. So I will share this with the world because I want people to understand I'm very intentional with my kids from this money thing. It's a little bit different, right? Like the kids they got apps, they're my kids aren't struggling. They're not getting into fights on the corner with bullies and stuff. Not yet. Probably prissy kids or, the kids who think they're bullies and, possibly could go pick on them later on, but they're black belts, right? So I'm good with it. They can win those
different
wars.
Life.
But different life. It's not tough dudes fighting tough dudes. It's soft people thinking they're tough, and then they get popped in the face, and then they go cry to mommy, and then mommy calls me. But another story for another day. But with money, with money for my kids, same thing,
Nice.
right? My dad taught me one way. I had to figure out how to teach my kids about money in a different way. So
Hmm.
when my daughter started, so my daughter's 10 now, when my daughter started
Hmm.
bringing home A's are better. Right when she brought it home, I go, you're going to put it in my drawer, in my office. There's a drawer. So she has her own bank of A's. 90s or
Mm.
better only. 89s or lower, I don't even want to see them, right? But what I did was I started making that a currency in the house. So she would
Mm.
bring home A's. She goes, "Hey, Dad, I want this like single bag of chips." Well, I'm like, "Honey, there's a community Costco bag, right? The big ones. I'll be nice. I share the community ones. But if you want the single one, that's for you to take to school, or you have to buy it for me with one of your A's." So
Ah,
depending on the day, Kyle, she would come up and she'd be
yeah.
like, "Oh, I want Funyuns," and I know they're her favorite. And then I'm like, "Well, how much do you think those Funyuns are?" None of them had a price tag. It was a different price
Mhm.
every day, just like the markets, just like the world.
Hey, I
And
love it.
so and so she's like, "Dad, but I love these Funyuns." I was like, "How many A's?" She's like, "One A." I'm like, "What about three?" And she's like, and it makes her think, how many A's does she actually have? Is it
That's
worth
good.
Or is it worth losing a A in your bank account to have less to
Yeah,
buy later, right?
right.
So then it got to the point where she's like, "Hey, Dad, I want to go to Target." And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
"Cool, what do you want to buy?" "I want to buy this $30 art kit." And I'm like, "Cool, you want this $30 art kit?" And then I'm like, "Well, how many A's do you think it is?" And she's like, "5." And I'm like, 10. That's $30 is a lot. And then we would negotiate. So then she would
Hmm.
think, okay, well, if I only have 12 A's and I give up 10 for this art kit, I only have two left. Is there an extra scoop of ice cream I want this weekend? Or like, do I want to
Yeah.
go eat McDonald's this weekend? Because nothing's free in my house, and I teach them that. If I have
Hmm.
to go struggle for 8 hours, struggle, right? If I have to go to
Right.
work hard for 8 hours and bring home money and food, you've got to do the same thing because I know you go to school 8 hours and I'm
Yeah.
teaching them. You work hard for 8 hours at school, you get your A's, you bring them home, you got currency. We do whatever
Right.
you want.
Yeah.
Boom. There's no allowance in this family. I do not give them $1, right? Like none. Like
Yeah.
you get the A's, you bring that to me, you go ask me what you want, and then we go transact, right?
Yeah. Right.
But there's no, "Hey, here's $20 for making the bed." Dude, you better go make that bed. If not, I'm gonna pop you in the head, right? Like this
Yeah.
is you better go get those clothes out of the dryer. "Well, Dad, no, 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 no. You want a place to sleep? You better get those clothes out of the dryer, son." Right?
Hmm.
So it's 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 like if they're doing things outside of what they're supposed to do, that's how they go earn things, not the things that they should be doing. So
Sure.
that's money in my book, right? For
Yeah.
kids.
It makes a ton of sense. I also like because there's several factors that are happening there, right? It's like budgeting, right? Like how many A's do I have to be able to get the things? It's saving, right? Do I need to spend this now? Do I save it for later? And it's just understanding like negotiation, right? Like if you say it's three, I think it's one, maybe it's two, right? Like so it's like multiple
Ex-
money factors in a very basic way, which is so cool. I actually love that. I've never heard that before.
yeah. That is my tip for parents.
Mhm.
Parents, you need to do this when they're young.
Yeah,
1,000%.
right.
Like me.
It's
I
like
mean,
muscle. The Damon West story, if anyone knows him, the coffee bean story. Can you tell that story? Because I think like hearing it from you is like really cool because of the way you already lived through kind of these values. So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's and it was funny. I say a lot to people, "Hey man, be happy you're 6 foot above and get to enjoy a cup of coffee today." I always say
sure.
that, like, because I
It's
I
on your
remember
LinkedIn
there was a
profile.
yeah, it's everywhere. I say people ask me, "Hey, how you doing, man? 6 foot above, can't complain, right? Got on my own
Yep.
2 feet for my own cup of coffee, still get to go to the restroom by myself." Because there was a day where I couldn't, and so yeah, there was a over at the West in Memorial City, and it happened on Wednesday, Thursday. And so this specific show, they actually always have a keynote main speaker as the last thing on the agenda. So what happens is everybody ends up staying for the whole show because they want, and then they fly out the
To
next
get to
day
that. Yeah.
to get to that. So it was cool because it was funny. I was like, "Who is it?" And they're like, "Damon West." I'm like, "Who the heck is that?" I almost skipped it because
Ooh.
everybody around me was like, "I don't know who that is," and nobody looked it up. And so right 10 minutes before he gets on stage at 4:40, I look him up. So 4:30, I'm like talking to my buds. They're like, "Man, we're gonna skip it. We don't even know who this guy is, right?" It's not like a big
Mhm.
name, you know.
Sure.
Not yet, or not in their eyes. But then
Yeah.
me, I'm always like, ABC, always be curious. So
Mhm.
I look it up and I go, uptown burglar, like privileged dude, lost all his money, went to jail. Like I was like, hold on, what the heck? Like I got to hear this guy. So I
Mhm.
go in, I get a front row seat. Kyle, couple things after your stories that I thought about you, which we'll talk about. And
Nice.
I thought
Thanks.
about, when you hear people speak and then you feel it in your heart and then your eyes get a little watery, that's literally what happened
Mm.
in this moment for me. And so, yeah, this Damon West guy was super cool. Basically, I'll try to do a snippet. You can find him online, but
Mm.
he had a privileged upbringing, white kid out of Texas, and Division I quarterback, graduated college. I think he had scholarships, he said. Got a job on like Wall Street or something, some big financial job, big building. And I think it was like 2006 possibly when the financial industry started getting like ruffled up. 2006, I forget the exact year, but it was between 2006 2008.
Mhm.
And the company was having issues. So one of his colleagues was like, "Hey man, company's kind of whack right now. It's weird. Come downstairs." And so he goes in, I guess, into like the guy's car. I believe it was guy, and the guy pulls out like this glass pipe, right? And he's like, "Hey, take a puff." And he's like he's never seen. He's like, "But that's cool. That's a glass pipe." So he grabbed it from the guy and lit it. Took one puff. So basically, a life, almost like a quarter of his life, if you think to his 20s, and then one puff, after the one puff of crystal meth, 18 months, his life went downhill. He sat on stage, he lost his family, pawned everything, sold everything, lost relationships, all that stuff, because the crystal meth took over, the drug addiction took over, lost everything. And to a point where he basically created this like organized crime ring he was called the Uptown Burglar. So then the cops started watching this guy, but he never hurt anybody. So he would, basically wait until people leave the house, go and break in,
Mhm.
grab whatever, pull the cash, pull whatever, and then go pawn it and go buy some. So he became this criminal from a
Mhm.
privileged life, Division I quarterback, good financial district job, to plummeted. And I believe he was up there in New York, from what he was saying. But yeah, man. And then the cops basically honed in on him and his crew, arrested him, and then took him to jail. When he went to trial, the judge specifically wanted to make a piece out of him and says, he's like, "I'm going to give you basically something worse than like capital murderers and, all those things, like the really bad people,
That's
like the
crazy.
drug lords, the cartel bosses, the gangsters." He's like, "I'm going to
Yeah.
make sure you get the worst sentence to prove a point to people that if you make this wrong decision, you're going to end up like Damon West." Right.
Mhm.
So that's what happened. So they lock him up. They give him like 70 years. I don't know, remember the exact number, but like
Oh,
67 years.
crazy.
Basically, it's a life sentence, right? So they
Yeah,
give him
of
a life
course.
sentence because he's already in his 20s. By the time he gets out, he's going to be 80. You're not going to do anything at 80. You
Yeah.
might as well just fall over in a
Right.
freaking grave, right? At that point.
Yep.
But when he went into this jail, and by the way, he got locked up. I don't know what they call it. Like, what is the maximum security prisons? Like, is it like a certain level 5, maximum security, whatever it is, like the highest
Sure.
level? So he was
Yeah.
with like the Bloods, the Crips, the gangsters, the white
Ooh.
supremacist people. Like he was in
Yeah.
that, like what you would watch in movies.
Yeah.
And so one of his first, I believe, cellmates was his Muslim name was Muhammad. And it was cool the way he said it because the Muhammad guy calls him over. He's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you," because he was a new guy. And he's like, "Hey, basically, prison's going to give you and do a lot of things to you. But you got to think about prison as, are you going to be the carrot, the egg, or coffee bean, right?"
Hmm.
And Muhammad goes, if you take a boiling pot of water, which is life, right? It's there's a lot of pressure. It gets hot sometimes and heated up. A carrot's hard. You put the carrot in it, it becomes soft, right? That's what prison can do to you. You can be an egg, right? It's, liquid in the inside, hard on the outside. You put it in water, it gets mad, and then the inside changes, right? So you go from like this, egg that's all like the be like water, like Bruce Lee inside of an egg, to like you stiffen up and you become cooked. and you're like pissed off inside, right? Or he goes, you could be a coffee bean. Meaning if you take coffee beans and you put it in this boiling hot pot of water, what does it do? It changes the pot of water. So, which is crazy because and most people, they go to jail, they get like tattoos, they become a part of a gang, whatever so what he did was he took Muhammad's approach in prison, and he was trying to be the coffee bean for everybody, whether you were a gang member, you were a person, he wanted to uplift you. And he did so well spreading this coffee bean message, or like, just smiling at people, right? Rather than going in thinking your heart. Like, Kyle, you could be a hardcore cartel boss. Like, hey, Kyle, what's up, man? How's your day, dude? Like, just be nice.
Yeah.
Like, why am I going to come in thinking you're a cartel boss and you're getting ready to shank me and I got to fight you, right? Like, just come in with a smile, no matter how bad, mean, green these machines are, these people are. Just smile, Yeah. And so he would bring that coffee bean to every conversation. He did so well that I guess they gave him a like, he's out on parole, but he's still on parole for the next 50 years or something like that, to where he has to fill out like an application or paperwork just to go travel to a different city or different state. And he travels like once a week. He's in a new place to go give this coffee bean speech. But it's, again, you can always turn around in our life, as as I know, us three, Damon, West, you, Kyle, and me. We all know that no matter how hard life gets, if you stay positive, you have a smile on your face, and you just push through it. And again, my biggest thing is Bruce Lee, right? My dad and Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee says, be like water, right? Just flow. It's okay. You're going to crash into a rock. You're going to crash into a mountain. You're going to crash into trees. Deers are going to poop in the water, right?
Right.
It's going to get really hard. Like, people are going to poop in your water, but just be like water and keep flowing, right? And so that's what Damon's message was just be the coffee bean, right? Just go.
That's so good.
So it was awesome, man. And then I got to talk to him after. I literally pulled him aside after, so that was super cool.
I love it because, again, it just goes back to, like I said, kind of the way you live and the way I try to live is be the change, right? Like, change the water, don't let it change you, right? Because the world is like you said, the world is hot. It's a lot of pressure. It's very easy to succumb to the pressures and the temptations and the influence of things in the world that tell you be like this, buy these things, look like this, talk like this, act like this. But it comes back to, like, and we talked about this last time, I'd love to hear your thoughts again, of actually focusing on being authentic to who you were made to be. Like, how were you created? Who is Johnson made to be? Who is Kyle made to be? What's the things that I am supposed to bring to the world? And similar to pleading the fifth, do nothing else, right? No matter what the world says, no matter what people tell you, do nothing else other than what your purpose is, and stay true to yourself. Because we live in a world where people don't know what their identity is. They don't know what their purpose is or why they're here. And so they try to find it in all these other things, right? You and I chatted about that a little bit, but if you don't mind giving your insight a little bit into, again, like, what do people do to find out, say they didn't have a dad like you, they didn't have great parents like me, they don't have morals or values instilled in them. How do they find those things and kind of create their own value system, like plead the fifth, and find their true purpose? How would you even go about that?
Yeah. I think it's, first off, if you're not lucky like me, even though my dad was my dad's a military dad, super hard on me, never said I love you growing up, never said good job, never said congratulations. Right? That was my dad, because I was the only boy of four girls. So there's 5 of us. I got 4 sisters. So he wanted to toughen me up. So that was kind of like the hard way of getting me toughened up. But I think it's you have to don't get sucked into a world. And when we were growing up, we would call you a poser, right? Like, people who'd act like they were gangsters, but they're not. We're like, you're a poser. Or you grew up in a nice neighborhood and now you're a gangster, but you don't know what that is. You're a poser, right? Now posers are the guys that, like, do interviews with their like this, and then they have a watch. Like, literally the whole interview, I've watched a guy do this, and he's talking the whole time, and he's like pulling his. I'm like, what are you doing? Or the guys that are in their 20s and they're leaning on a Lambo, or girls too, right? They're leaning on a Lambo. They're like, I'm a millionaire. But then, like, you go look up their business on, like, Dun & Bradstreet or something. I always tell people, do that first. If you really want to look at somebody, or, like, sit down and ask people that know them, like, be like, whoever's closest to that person, be like, hey, how successful is that guy really? Oh no, he's a bust, right? Because people who actually want to be open and share how they did it are the ones you really want to follow, right? Like,
Sure.
I mean, Warren Buffett is one. He says it out loud what he does. He's a
Yep.
multi-millionaire, probably billionaire, but he's
Yep.
so genuine. That's the guy you want to follow. He gives his secrets away for free,
Yep.
right? He doesn't charge you for his secrets. He's like, dude, this is how I did it. And
Yep.
people go, I don't want to follow the guy who's a billionaire. Let me go follow this 20-year-old guy who just told me to buy his book or subscribe to his bull crap, right? I go, guys, it's common sense. So I think the first one is like finding somebody you can actually trust, almost like faith. Find the church you want to go to every Sunday because that preacher makes you feel good, because whatever it is, right? But I think that's find that first if you don't have it yet in your life. Stay away from all the fake stuff. You know, for me, all my friends would always push me to do this. Automatically, I go, if everybody's going right, the analogy, if everybody's jumping off the cliff or jumping off the bridge, I ain't doing that. I'm going that way. So that's just been my philosophy in life. If I see everybody go somewhere, I'm like, If there's a long line, I'm like, no, thank you. If everybody's buying $300 t-shirts, I'm like, you're an idiot. I mean, again, to an extent, I'll tell you about this. When you can buy a $300 t-shirt, I'll tell you when you can. But I think it's that. I think it's like, you know, I read this book to my kid. Again, more teachings to my kid. I was trying to teach my kids how to be them and not follow anybody. There's a book growing up called Pete the Cat. And this Pete the Cat has 4 groovy buttons. Pete the Cat, you know, I think it's like walking in my new shoes. But in every Pete the Cat story, Pete the Cat goes, be yourself because everyone is taken. So I think everybody wants to know your story, right? Everybody wants to know, and it's true. Don't be scared to share it and truly be yourself, right? So, you know, I think martial arts did that to me though, Kyle, growing up. Like I instilled a lot of confidence because I was in martial arts. My kids are in it. So they get in front of 5,000 people. They're not nervous or anxious. They tie their belts to get on. They go perform. They walk off. They get a gold medal. Cool, dad. I'm like, dude, congratulations. Awesome. Great work. Right. But it's, you got to put yourself in those moments of taking the risks to learn who you are.
Yeah, that's good.
I always tell people think they're tough and people are fake behind the keyboards, in their cars behind the windshield, and during family gatherings because none of them have gotten kicked in the face before. So go get kicked in the face, right? Like, no kidding. Go take a martial arts class. It's a 3-week trial. Tell the master, I want to spar. Go get hit in the face. You'll know who you are right then. That's probably, and that's what I want to do for my kids. Like, I didn't care that they got their black belt. I was like, I want my kids to get kicked in the face. I remember telling my wife that. Why? Like, they're going to learn who they are. Trust me.
Yeah.
So I think that's like finding yourself. There's different ways, you know, but I think it goes back to the foundation thing. What do you want your foundation to be based on who you follow? You got to fill the foundation first. Don't chase the shiny thing yet. Don't chase, you know, the car or the clothes or the house or the title. Everybody wants a cool title, VP of whatever. I'm like, guys, I'm a dumb sales guy. I will tell you that. I won't even tell you my title. What do you do, Johnson? Dude, I'm just the dumb sales guy in the room, man. What do you do? Right. And but I'm okay with it, right? I'm genuine. I'm honest with myself. So, because I say I'm a dumb sales guy because I'm always learning. If I don't say that, I'm going to stop learning. So I tell people that's what you've got to do. And you don't have to, and I'm saying this because I want to level the playing field. You don't have to idolize people standing in front of expensive cars. If you want me to, I'll take a picture in front of my 2008 Toyota Highlander Grandpa Gold with 205,000 miles, and I'll do this for you. And this is what happiness and retirement looks like at 41. If you want me to do that, I'll do it for you. But realize, like, real is real, fake is fake. Figure out who the real people are that will give you the stuff for free, that will you know what I mean? That you can, that aren't going to try to sell you something to like build the foundational elements of your life. because it's all
Sure.
free anyways, right?
Yeah,
So I
totally.
think realize that
Yeah. I
is
think
the first
that's
step you got to do, right?
That's huge. I love that. It's huge. It's like, hey, if you don't know what your values are, what you align with, and who you want to be, find the person that is the person that you want to be, and basically just get the information and copy what they're doing, right? Like if they have good values, if they have good systems and frameworks, like copy it, right? Like it doesn't have to be like you have to come up with that. There's no original ideas, right? But right, like if you want to plead the fifth, I'm sure you're like, yeah, take that. Like if that can help you live a better life, like copy it for me, right? Like take the things other people have put in the work to create and use it, right? Like I think that's fantastic. I love that idea, especially for people because like you said, there's so many choices of who do I follow? What do I do? What's the coolest business model? What's the best value system? How do I set my life operating system, right? It's like just find the people that genuinely have done it and have a framework that they want to give you and then use their framework to build a life that looks like theirs or that is yours but is using the frameworks that they've given you. It's fantastic, right? Like but I
100%.
think it's right. It's like it's so important to make sure who you're following are the right people. Because to your point, there's a lot of people that have bad intentions, and we live in a world that can put a facade out there, and you can follow somebody that actually hasn't done the things that they're saying they do, and you can easily take a left when you should take a right. I think that's huge.
Yes,
Uh,
big time,
there's
big
Man,
time.
there's so many nuggets here, so much gold. I think, like you said, I think you gotta package this at some point, whether you have a podcast or a book or both. You go on speaking tours like David West, like that's your selling happiness future. I'm putting it out there for you right now. Your future of selling happiness, like you said earlier, is bright. You have these things that if you package it right, man, you will light some people on fire. Have you ever heard the statement of light yourself on fire with passion and people will come from miles to watch?
I have not, I have not, but I'm thinking just
I
big
think of you
bonfires
when I
off the
think of that.
highway. Yeah.
I think of you though, like right, like somebody that I love that statement. Light yourself on fire with passion, and people will
Yeah.
come from miles to watch you burn. Like, dude, you have that. You have the passion, and I would run for miles to watch you burn. Not in a bad way,
I love it. I appreciate
bro.
that. Yeah, I'll have to
Before we
figure out
hop
a
off
way
here,
for
can
sure.
you? What's your last tidbit of wisdom? What's the last nugget? Right, the last 5%, as I like to call it. What's the last thing that you're like, man? If I had one last thing to say to somebody, it would be this.
Yeah, I think it'd be two things for me based on like we
Mm-hmm.
talked about money and all that stuff. I think, another piece of the money, if you want to live a good life, you got to adopt foundations like I have. You have to, right? The most successful people do. They all do, right? All of them. They all live a life similar to what I do. All the, what is it? The next door, the next door
The
millionaire or something
millionaire
like
next
that.
door.
Like you don't know. He rolls up, he pulls up in his Hyundai, he rolls in his house, he's wearing the same t-shirt every single day. Like everybody thinks he's broke. Like you want to be that guy, right? And so I would say, little things like adopt. If you can't buy it cash, you can't buy it.
Hmm.
And so there's one like I grew up with, and it depends on what you're buying. So if it's like super big, like we'll call it a Porsche because it's a childhood dream of yours to buy. Mine was a Supra, and I attained it at 23 years old because that was the poster on my wall. I've always wanted to. That was the only material item. Everybody has a material item that they want deep down inside. It's the
Mm-hmm.
one thing. Don't say it's 20 things because then you're just going overboard, right? But there's one, two, or three things that you absolutely want to purchase in your life. When you save for those, make sure you can buy 3 or 5 of those cash before you buy the one cash. Because
That's
what's
good.
happening is that means you're not sacrificing your faith, integrity, family time, or health to get that thing at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's number one. Always remember all the systems that we talked about at the beginning, everything I shared, just make sure, because then you will affect your fifth if you can't afford that thing. Because then in your job, you're gonna throw integrity aside, you're gonna sell your soul and do devil's work, right? Just to make the sale, just to go buy that thing because you can't afford it. And then
Mm-hmm.
you're going to work your tail off, and then you're going to be mean to your family and your kids and your wife and your spouse and your girlfriend and your husband, whatever, because you don't have enough time to just decompress and go hang with them and enjoy those sips of coffee, right, in the morning, 6 foot above. It is a yin and a yang, right? So the money thing, absolutely. You don't have to think you're going to be a multimillionaire, billionaire like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. It's okay not to. Just be happy with what you are doing and enjoy those moments because they go fast, right? So that's number one. I think correlation to the money thing and the job and the personal, professional, I've learned that you got to do what you love because you can rather than do what you dread because you're broke. So a lot of people graduated college, they got the job, they moved into a nice condo in the Galleria, they bought the nice car, the Beamer, they're financing away, then they meet the pretty girl, she gets pregnant, they pay for a $30,000 wedding, they finance that bad boy. Then they go, oh, I got to move out of this apartment because I'm pregnant. Okay, then they go buy a house that they can't afford, and then they finance that right away. What does it sound like? The 90% or 80% average American, right? Guys, like, again, like I said, everybody goes right, I'll go this way. Everybody's going left, I'll go this way. Everybody's jumping off a cliff, I don't, right? I back up and I go back. And so just think about that. If you get stuck in a career because you have to and you don't want to, you're not happy internally. So guess what that means? You're never going to be able to 100% make the other people happy, the wife, the kids, all that stuff. It's true. You have to be 100% happy with yourself. So the only way you can is if you live as small as possible at the beginning to figure out who you are. Once you hit who you are, and you go, this is what I want to be for the rest of my life, and I'm 100% happy with it. I can do this. Think about, can you do this for 20 years? With kids, with the wife, with the small house, with the big house, if you can afford it, again, depending on the system. But if you don't love what you do every day, and you're not happy with yourself, you're not going to be able to exude that happiness, right? So you talk about repackaging this happiness thing. I'm happy because I sacrificed 16 to 26, and right at 26, there was that smile on my face every day, right? Because I knew at that point, man, if I have to quit my job tomorrow, I could literally spend 40 hours a week making sure my wife is smiling, right? Making sure my kids are going on the right track. And that's the most important, because that's the F for family and the fifth, right?
Sure.
You got to be able to think that way. Because if you're just stuck in a grind, in a hamster wheel, as most people call it, everybody hears this analogy, you're stuck in the hamster wheel, right? And then you run like crazy, and you go eat, you drink water, you go to the restroom, you go back and run again. That's your life. And then what? Most hamsters die early, right?
Sure.
You're literally killing your happiness inside. You're killing your career because it's not something when you're killing, you not being able to, make everybody else around you happy. You're that guy that's pissed off behind the windshield. You're that guy pissed off behind the keyboard talking mess. You know what I mean? Pissed off at your family during family gatherings. Don't be that guy or gal, right? So do what you love because you can, rather than do what you dread because you're broke. But you have to think about how you're going to take some of these things and incorporate that and make that change, right? Or start if you haven't started yet.
Of course. Boom. Yeah, you nailed it. It's just building the frameworks for your life, right? So that you can then live a life that you enjoy versus it's like being proactive versus being reactive with your life, right?
100%.
Like, take control of your life, find the frameworks and the values you want to live by, live humbly, and then be happy, right? Like, don't let life suck the things out of you. Like, take life take the bull by the horns. I like to say to a lot of younger people, take the bull by the horns. This is your life. Don't let other people dictate what's going to happen. You decide how you're going to live it, and then you need to take action to make sure that you actually do live that life. Don't be a victim. I love it.
Correct. 100%.
Johnson,
I love talking to you.
You're a legend.
It's always great.
You're a legend, bro. Thank you for making the time again. Again, I know you're a really busy guy. I know there's probably a lot of things pulling at you. So for you to take the time a second time is well, I'm sure that's a lot. But really, like, thanks for spending more time with me, man. Like, it's a blessing. You're incredible, and I really appreciate it.
Hey, Kyle, you as well, man. Your story's awesome too. I appreciate you sharing
Thanks,
that
bro.
with me the first time we met. So that's always like
Totally.
I love talking to you, brother.
Let's go. I got it. Well, this has been another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. If you want to find Johnson, it's Johnson Tran on LinkedIn. He doesn't have any other socials, right?
Stay out of trouble.
That's right, man. Stay out of trouble.
Stay out of trouble.
We'll end on that.
Cybersecurity reasons. What else do you want? Yeah. Keep it professional.
Look.
LinkedIn, you can find me.
Hey, I love it. Hey, guys, we'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, stay out of trouble. See ya.